Good evening. Thank you so much for coming to tonight's EHHD Showcase. If I didn't have a chance to meet you as we were mingling and you had a chance to learn about all of the unbelievable centers and research institutes and projects that are part of the College of Education, Health, and Human Development, let me introduce myself. My name is Tricia Seifert, and I have the dear honor and privilege to serve as the Dean of the College of Education, Health, and Human Development. And tonight, and always, you are part of our Pounce. Now, so some of you might be wondering, like, what does that mean? And for a show of hands, what do you think a collective of bobcats is called? They're called a Pounce. And you tonight are like me in full bobcat attire. And welcome to our Pounce. And so you'll hear me talk a little bit about how we support our community in one of those ways. And we're just going to lift it up to start. Is with our 5K. It's really a celebration of wellness and well-being, and it is a centerpiece to the work that we do to support students and communities all across the state of Montana. And that's really a major theme tonight because you're in for such a treat. You are going to hear from a number of award-winning faculty and staff, two of whom are part of instrumental to our land-grant mission and our land-grant university. So when you hear that phrase, land-grant university, how many of you have heard that, those three words? Okay, awesome. Keep your hands up if you know what that means. Oh, you've clearly heard Wadad Cruzado. But if you're not sure, a public land-grant university is a public educational institution where the resources of the university are literally extended out across the state. Extension is the dedicated educational outreach arm of all land-grant universities. And in our college, we are fortunate to have 4 extension faculty. And tonight, you will hear from 2 of them. I'm excited that among our program and kicking us off tonight will be Dr. Alison Brennan, one of our extension faculty members. And then later in the program, you'll hear from Dan Koltz, another one of those extension faculty. You have programs on your tables, and I guarantee you, you will leave tonight being inspired by the work that our faculty and staff in our college, where we learn by doing to transform lives and communities in the people's interest. You're going to leave tonight feeling like, man, the world is in good hands with these faculty, these staff members, as they educate the future citizens and workforce of Montana and beyond. And so without further ado, I want to bring up Dr. Alison Brennan for her presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Alison Brennan, and I am presenting Cultivating Well-Being using Horticultural Therapy to promote multidimensional wellness. I have been a gardener as long as I can remember. As soon as we were walking, my brother and I were helping my dad plant and harvest peas in our home garden. My dad was a lifelong enthusiastic gardener. Coincidentally, today would have been his 71st birthday. So I'm dedicating this presentation to the memory of Jack Brennan, who passed his green thumb down to me. The American Horticultural Therapy Association has different definitions for horticultural therapy and therapeutic horticulture. These definitions are extremely detailed and directly tied to the credentials of the professional who is implementing the program. Thus, here is my simplified definition. Horticultural therapy is the strategic use of plant cultivation as a method for achieving client-centered goals. Horticultural therapy goes beyond simply growing plants. It is a structured and intentional practice that is planned, implemented, and evaluated by a trained professional. The client-centered goals of horticultural therapy depend on the model being used. There are 3 basic models. Therapeutic, which focuses on clinical outcomes following illness or injury. Vocational, which focuses on development of specific knowledge and skill sets. And the third type, which is the one that I think best aligns with the work I do as an extension specialist, the wellness model, which focuses on promoting multidimensional wellness and enhancing quality of life. Horticultural therapy programs utilizing a wellness model have demonstrated positive outcomes, including improvements in coping, feelings of connection and belonging, reduced stress, and improvements in self-efficacy across a broad range of populations and settings. In order to provide horticultural therapy in a way that is endorsed by the American Horticultural Therapy Association, there are some distinct educational and professional training criteria that must be satisfied. It would take me this entire presentation to explain the finer points of professional credentialing, so I'm going to focus on just one of those requirements, and that is the completion of specific horticultural therapy coursework, which I finished at the end of 2025. The Horticultural Therapy Certificate program I completed was through the Horticultural Therapy Institute with formal academic credit awarded by Colorado State University. This certificate program is AHTA accredited, meaning a person can complete the certificate program with the assurance that it will satisfy the required coursework for credentialing. The program is 9 undergraduate credits across 4 courses. To help you understand the depth of planning that goes into horticultural therapy, I'm going to discuss some of the work I completed in horticultural therapy management, the culminating course in the series that requires synthesis and application of content from across the 4 courses. For this course, we had to identify a specific community organization that could be a collaborating partner, as well as a physical site for programming. I selected the Bozeman chapter of Cancer Support Community Montana because for multiple past years, I was involved in planning, planting, and caring for the Garden of Hope. After identifying the organization and physical site, we had to go and take lots of photos of our selected sites, and from there, we created base site drawings indicating all major structures, plants, water sources, and topographical characteristics, with some notes about aspects that could be improved. This base site plan was revised multiple times during the course with substantial peer feedback. The largest assignment during the course was to develop a detailed program proposal describing the program rationale, the target population, program goals, participant treatment goals, and how we would track progress, topics and activities for each session, a program budget, and, my favorite, how we would evaluate the program. We also developed marketing materials for our proposed programs. My proposed program would use a wellness model. The audience would be a small, closed group of adult cancer survivors, and it would consist of 9 weekly 90-minute sessions beginning in May and ending in July. The treatment goals that you see listed on the slide are group goals, meaning they are for all participants, which is a common practice in both the wellness model and the vocational model, whereas the therapeutic model typically uses individually tailored goals that are developed through a series of meetings with each patient and their treatment team. Now, you might be wondering, what does the session actually look like? So here's an example session. It would begin with a guided 5-minute body scan in the garden. This mindfulness activity would be followed by gardening activities, including transplanting herbs and vegetable starts into the raised beds and transplanting annual flowers into a decorative flower bed. Following the horticultural activities, participants would repeat the guided 5-minute body scan in the garden, and the session would end with an individual journaling activity in which they would be prompted to reflect on their experiences during both body scans and make comparisons between the two. This is just one example, so I'd like to note that other sessions would make use of plant-based metaphors to promote reflection on central wellness themes. For example, the process of hardening off herb seedlings as a metaphor for healthy stress versus toxic stress. in terms of where I'm headed, now that I've completed the certificate program, I would actually like to implement a pilot program at CSC Bozeman. And I'm very excited to report that literally yesterday we had our first meeting to work on this. And I also want to point out that the current CSC Bozeman program coordinator, Avery Schaff, is a graduate of MSU's Human Development and Family Science program. Woo! Additionally, because I'm new to horticultural therapy, I'll be collaborating with other professionals as I work towards credentialing. Last semester, I joined a group of 6 extension professionals across the United States who have a range of credentials and experience. Our group submitted a presentation abstract focusing on the current and potential role of cooperative extension in advancing the profession and practice of horticultural therapy, and it was accepted for the 2026 International People Plant Symposium, taking place in Kyoto, Japan in August. I look forward to remaining connected to this group and seeing where our collaboration goes.
I'm trying to manifest some snow with this slide, but I don't think it's working. Hi, I'm Emily Tomayko, and I am faculty in nutrition where I teach and conduct research. I'm also a registered dietitian, and a lot of my work and research has focused on family-based health programs. And one thing I've learned is that the most important parts of these programs are often not the parts that we set out to study, especially when the work is community-driven. So today I hope to share a few things I've noticed along the way. I started my career being trained more in biochemical and molecular nutrition sciences, and a lot of my early work was lab-based, where you isolate variables and control things, which is really useful but answers a pretty narrow set of questions. And I became more interested in understanding how does health work in real life. And this shift led me to some really meaningful work across a variety of projects, including development of a traditional foods toolkit in partnership with the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, work to understand how 4-day school weeks impact children and families, particularly in rural areas, and a long-term project looking to understand the impacts of a family-based health promotion program developed for and with Native American communities called Turtle Island Tales. So this program, Turtle Island Tales, has been in development and testing for over 20 years now. It's actually started by Dr. Alex Adams, who's here today. So we've been testing some version of this program, and only because of really meaningful relationships with tribal community partners across at least 7 states. And this work has been done across 3 large 5-year studies. The first 2 of which were really trying to establish, does this health promotion program actually help families make health behavior change? And right now we're in another 5-year project looking at how to get this program to more families and communities. The program itself has 6 targets: increase fruit and vegetable intake, decrease added sugar intake, increase physical activity, decrease sedentary and screen time, improve sleep hygiene, and improve emotional regulation for families with young children, about 3 to 8. And those 6 topics are covered across 12 lessons. And those were designed to be delivered into family homes once a month over the course of a year. And over this program, we have reached over 1,100 children and families in their homes. And actually even more than that in ways that we haven't expected. So each of those 12 kits follows a similar format. There's a printed lesson booklet that's really designed for the grown-ups, a children's book on the topic for that month, a whole bunch of wellness and support items to complete activities that are outlined in the lesson booklet, recipes and handouts. And this here is just a sample of what would come in 1 month's packet. So this is the one on sleep, and it was meant to be delivered into the home and used by families. And what we found is that the program did help families make positive health behavior change, changes to diet and physical activity, and this is wonderful. But that's not what we heard from families. what we heard, what parents talked about, was how excited the kids got to receive mail in the home, how they look forward to doing the program together. So for them, it wasn't about the health outcomes, it was about connection. Once we found that the program had benefits for families, we really were interested in figuring out how to get this to more families in ways that were culturally relevant. And one of the things that happened after those first two major studies was the development of a character. So this is IGMU. And initially, IGMU was developed to feature in short films on our program website. And eventually he started to replace some of the lovely clip art that we had used in a lot of our program materials. So you can see a sample here. He's on stickers. He's on the goal card. And, as part of the program, every family gets a little IGMU puppet. So this is the first part of the first kit that they get. So this helps them to interact with and connect with the program. So everyone gets an IGMU. And this is just a quick look at what it takes to get the program out to communities. This is my office. So please keep in mind, we are a very small group of health scientists who are trying to manage inventory and shipping and trying to understand how to scale up this program. And one of the biggest challenges was the rising cost of postage. So mailing the packets into participant homes, tracking participant addresses, this became very challenging. So we started to look for other ways to get the program to interested families. One of our primary strategies has been working with Head Start and school classrooms, given that they serve the group of children that we think would benefit from Turtle Island Tales. And what this looks like is, instead of directly mailing the program into family homes, we send a box of the kit materials to a community partner, who then will take it to the classrooms and deliver it to the kids in their cubbies or their backpacks to entire classrooms. This has proven to be much more cost and time efficient, but we worried about keeping up that excitement about receiving the mail and keeping that family connection. One of the things that we did not expect was that once teachers saw this program going home to kids through their classroom, they wanted to start using the materials in the classroom as well. So we realized that this was an excellent opportunity to connect with even more children in the classroom. So these are just some pictures of some kids in classroom settings connecting with the program. And this strategy has proven to be really beneficial at a time when a lot of programs are facing budget or staffing constraints. So we're able to connect with even more kids. And I think this is a space too where IGMU really shines. So we were worried about maintaining that connection. It turns out that kids really love and connect with IGMU. Anyone in here who has a business background will think this is very obvious. Of course, it's marketing, it's branding, it's a character. But you have to remember, we're health scientists, learning this the hard way. So instead of getting the finger puppet, classroom partners now get a big IGMU that we affectionately refer to as Big Moo. And this has been excellent for connecting with the kids. So these are some pictures of Big Moo out and about with some of our partners at conferences and doing programming with our community partners. And I wanted to read a quote from one of our partners in Redcliffe, Manzanita, down here below, that she shared just this week. The joy and wellness surrounding Turtle Island Tales has been an amazing journey. The development of tribe-specific materials, language, recipes, and direct education has turned IGMU into a community celebrity, reminding families to take the time for each other. It has been an honor and a pleasure to help develop and utilize these tools. And in fact, one of the other benefits that we weren't expecting of sending these materials to classrooms and community partners was the opportunity for those partners to adapt the materials even more to local community needs. So this could look like the addition of language lessons, inclusion of Turtle Island Tales in locally circulated newsletters, development of activities that we haven't even suggested. So our partners continue to show us in really powerful ways how important it is to connect to family, culture, and community. And speaking of family, I don't usually get the opportunity to mention my family in presentations. They're actually here today. My kids have been a part of Turtle Island Tales since they were little. beta testing some of the materials, bringing in boxes. Actually, my husband snuck in the picture up there too, helping to pack kit materials, and even getting in some snuggles with IGMU. So looking back on one of the first publications that we put out on this program, our title was all about the really cool health behavior changes that we saw. And this is so important and continues to be a focus. And kind of buried in the paper, we mentioned that an unexpected finding was the report of this increased family time, time reading together, having family meals. And what our community partners continue to show us is that that connection is the intervention. So if there was anything that you heard that you liked or want to share, hopefully we can connect on that later. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kayte Kaminski, and I serve as the Senior Assistant Dean in the College of Education, Health, and Human Development. All right, some of you may know me well and have seen the title of my talk and wondered, oh boy, what's she setting on fire now? Well, I have in my life sometimes had the desire to burn it all down. This talk is about something a little bit different. So I hope that you can join me as I share my connection to this word, ablaze, and how it is shaped by what I value, and how I practice working to be my best self as an educator and human, and also reminding myself, present and younger self, that keeping my own eyes ablaze is also important. Also, fair warning, I'm obsessed with my husband and my kids, so there might be a few pictures of them. I come from a long line of strong women, and goodness knows we're raising a couple of strong, independent kids of our own. Just a few examples. My mom was an emergency room social worker for 30 plus years. My sister is a middle and high school art teacher at an all-boys Catholic military school. My grandma Esther was a career-long OB nurse. I have many friends and family who are just in general awesome. And yes, also Alanis Morissette. She's gotten me through and continues to get me through much angst as well as reflection and gratitude. As we all do, I have many identities and versions of myself. Some are delightful and compassionate, and some are, well, not. When I first met my husband, Adam, a song by Alanis Morissette had recently been released. Ablaze was a love letter of sorts to her 2 children, with a chorus of, "My mission is to keep the light in your eyes ablaze." I cried every time I heard it. I had tried to become a parent on my own before I met Adam, without luck. And knowing we were headed down that path, we knew it wouldn't be a linear one. But 2 miracles occurred, and we became parents, with a common mission, to keep the light in each other's eyes ablaze, and to keep these 2 small humans' eyes ablaze too. It's been a wild few years, to say the least, and everything has come back to this idea of wanting to keep the light on in others. I won't lie. At times, this has come at a cost to my own light. But as I often say to my students, we keep learning. One of several things ingrained in and who I show up as every day. The following beliefs guide my own light and support of others' lights as an educator, a mother, a partner, and a human. I believe in learning. While this may go without saying as an educator, maybe it doesn't. I see our world changing and facing challenges we haven't fully begun to grasp. Our jobs continue to shift in the needs of our students and children, and it's our job to remember why we do it. Whatever your why, revisit it, reflect on it, and maybe revamp it, so we, like our students, can keep learning. I believe in risk-taking. I have been known to say, at some point this may get me fired. But not yet. We can't do that learning without trying new things ourselves. I've always been more of a leap in the net will appear kind of gal. I moved to France without a place to live. I took an unpaid internship during a recession. I started a doctoral program without any interest in finishing. I finished. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in China. I started a family in what I consider hard times. Research is telling us that kids are taking less risks. Maybe we are too. And what are we sacrificing by not taking a risk sometimes? I believe in making mistakes. Without mistakes, we often stay stagnant. My best friend's dad called it a forward fumble. You're still moving forward, but understand the fumble and you learn from it. While in the NFL you don't get that yardage anymore, we can certainly take away from the concept. I think we sometimes forget to acknowledge our less than success moments when, for me, those are the ones that have shaped so much. I believe in compassionate accountability for myself and others. Let's call each other in. When I was directing the Compassion Project, someone in a workshop asked me how holding someone accountable could include compassion. I can't even imagine giving feedback or holding someone accountable without compassion. I often say, hey, if I'm being a butthead, tell me I'm being a butthead. Accountability matters, and if we do it with compassion, intention, and curiosity, we might just all walk away with a new view, a new understanding, and a willingness to shift for the purpose of growth. And don't be afraid to find the iceberg. There's one under each of us, and if we can remember that, compassion finds its place. I believe in supporting others and asking for support. We all need support at some point. It doesn't make us weak, it makes us human. We don't have to sail alone. I asked my husband on our first date if he'd ever go to counseling if our relationship progressed, and his yes made me feel safe and comfortable. He's a keeper. I believe in transparency and vulnerability. When those fumbles happen, when we're learning, let's acknowledge it and talk about it. It's real. Leadership for me is all about transparency and vulnerability, and both show my honest self that I'm bringing to the table to support others. Of course, we sometimes find the balance and recognize there are times when it's not appropriate. My experience tells me that it works more than it doesn't. I believe in fun, sarcasm, and silliness. If I can't be authentic in various ways, I miss out of connection. On the days that are especially hard and my light feels dim, I need that connection, even if it's a dad or a mom joke, a silly face from a kid, or shared sarcasm. And let's face it, in our jobs, sometimes we just need to laugh at stuff to continue to feel human again. I believe in rest and pause, even if I don't always practice it very well. The light in my eyes is not always ablaze. I forget or choose to ignore what I'm sharing tonight. But that in itself reminds me that everyone is doing the best they can with their current situation and the tools that they have. How I wish that we could all remember that when we jump to judgment. As I said before, we all have an iceberg. My job as a helper changed when I became a mom. The tough situations got tougher. The student who came to me after he had received the news of his best friend passing away from falling through the ice while ice fishing. The students whose parents or siblings have terminal illnesses. I started to feel things even more deeply. I never used to hug students. And while I don't hug everyone, I offer more than I used to. Maybe that's wrong, maybe it's not, but it's part of my humanity. Sometimes that hug or support helps to turn the light in their eyes back on. And sometimes I just sit with them when that light has dimmed. Never underestimate the power of simple presence and the role you could have to support someone's light. While preparing this presentation, my colleague Alison shared a quote, originally by Plutarch, that really resonated. He said, "Young people are not vessels to be filled, but fires to be lit." I think it's when students and all of us are creatively problem solving, feeding that fire, and looking through different lenses is when that fire ignites and stays ablaze. So recognize, know, seek to support. Whether you are working to turn your own light back on or supporting others, both are important. I believe that we get there by learning, by taking risks, by making mistakes, by compassionate accountability, advocacy and support, transparency and vulnerability, and by rest and pause. And if you ever need anything, know I'm here, because my mission is to keep the light in your eyes ablaze too. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ann Ellsworth, and tonight I'd like to talk about something that connects people across generations and experiences. In the next few minutes, we'll explore how literacy extends beyond the individual and builds communities. When we think about reading, we might picture something solitary. Single person, one book, maybe in a quiet place, maybe in a bustling coffee shop. But reading has truly never been a solitary act. In fact, reading is one of the most powerful ways we can connect across neighborhoods, generations, and cultures. Parents or caregivers find that reading aloud to children creates bonds that shape a lifetime. Think back to your own childhood. Do you remember Curious George, a Dr. Seuss book? Maybe Elizabeth and the Big Red Dog Clifford? Or Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. All of these are memories that endure. So let's take a minute now, turn to someone sitting at the table with you, and think back to that special book. Okay, so on the count of 3, shout them out. 1, 2, 3. What's your book? So, thank you. We all have those special books, and they hold a special place in our heart. Leland Jacobs penned a beautiful poem, a tribute to his mother who read to him. And I would like to dedicate this to my own mother. And it goes something like this. My mother read when I was small, of Humpty Dumpty on the wall, of Goldilocks, Babar, Bo Peep, and of a princess deep in sleep, of Curious George and Ping and Pooh, of Cinderella and Boy Blue. And oh, so many marvelous folks. I still can hear the way she spoke. In cadences that high or low, loud or soft, fast or slow, made all things she was reading of something I could know and love, something that in prose or rhyme is my own once upon a time. When young children enjoy book experiences outside of home, they bring that enthusiasm into the classroom. Sure, teachers, especially those in the lower elementary grades, teach children the how-to of reading, but they also plant those seeds of curiosity and a fondness for reading. And we know that a fondness for reading is something children develop in much the same way they catch a cold, by being effectively exposed to it. Before coming to Montana State University, I was a public school teacher, and I saw firsthand what teachers can accomplish in introducing books to children. It is in school where children learn to read, a complex cognitive skill that involves understanding word structure and language, decoding, and a lot of other literacy skills. Building on my public school teaching experience, I transitioned to Montana State. And here I work with future teachers. And I help them so that when they step into the classroom, they'll be able to instruct with confidence and with skill. But more than that they'll be able to share their love for language and books with their students. Because as we all know, enthusiasm for anything, golfing, fishing, or reading, is contagious. Here at Montana State University, we begin each academic year with Convocation, an event that marks the beginning of a new chapter for college students and for the entire university community. The centerpiece of Convocation is a book that joins the university and the Bozeman community for lively exchanges. You may recall past Convocation titles, most recently Fire and Brimstone, a book about the 1917 North Butte mining disaster, Better by Atul Gawande, Educated by Tara Westover, I Am Malala, and Tommy Orange's There. Exciting news. The selected Convocation text for fall 2026 is Catherine Schultz's Being Wrong, Adventures in the Margins of Air. These powerful works have inspired readers and generated conversations in and outside of the classroom. That's the power of reading. Book clubs are another fine example of how reading builds community. When people come together to read the same book, they're not just discussing plot and characters. They're sharing perspectives. A single story can spark conversations about identity, history, relationships, justice, and hope. In book clubs, we learn how differently people can experience the same words, and that difference becomes a strength. These discussions build empathy. They teach us to listen. They help us understand not only the story on the page, but the people sitting around the table. Libraries, for example, Rennie Library here on campus, as well as the Bozeman Public Library, are among the most democratic spaces we have. Libraries welcome everyone, regardless of age, income, background, or beliefs. Libraries host story hours, author talks, community events, and they even provide maker spaces. They're not just buildings full of books. They are living hubs of learning and belonging. Yet another example of community building is the Little Free Library. You've seen them. Small wooden boxes on posts in front yards, near schools, in parks, filled with books and marked by a sign that says, "Take a book, leave a book." You don't need a library card, money, or an introduction. Just open the door and find a mystery novel, a children's book, or a dog-eared paperback that clearly meant something to someone. Each book is a small act of connection. As I conclude this portion of tonight's showcase, I'd like to leave you with a few final thoughts. Reading builds community because it helps us understand one another. Books allow us to live lives we've never lived and see the world through eyes unlike our own. When we read about people who are different from us, we grow compassion. When we read about people who are similar to us, we feel less alone. Both experiences are essential to building strong, healthy communities. In a time when it's easy to retreat into our own bubbles, reading invites us outward. It asks us to slow down, to listen, and to engage. So whether it's a child discovering a book in a free little library, a first-year seminar exploring a convocation text, a group of neighbors meeting for a monthly book club, or a quiet afternoon spent at the public library, reading is never just about the words on the page. It's about people. It's about connection. It's about community. Thank you for coming this evening and sharing in this vibrant exchange of ideas.
Hello, my name is Jessi, and I'm the program director for the undergraduate food and nutrition program. When I graduated with my master's degree in human nutrition from Oregon Health and Science University, I was certain I had a plan to save the world. I was going to tell people how much to eat and what to eat, and everybody was going to be healthier. I thought my job was to take someone like Becca here, who I was told was the epitome of unhealthy in all of my textbooks, and turn her into Becky, a thinner, more vibrant version of herself. And I knew I had the perfect equation. You eat more fruits and vegetables, you exercise a whole lot, and you will lose weight. And ultimately, you will be healthy and happy. I got my first job in a rural community in Oregon, where 65% of the population was Hispanic. 30% of those folks were foreign-born, and many of them were working in agriculture. That experience completely blew up my idea of health. I realized that things like financial security, access to food, education, literacy, community, and the environment where people live, work, play, and worship plays an enormous role in their health and well-being. How was I to tell someone to add more fruits and vegetables to their plate when they barely had enough money to get by? What was I thinking? Telling a mom to sit down at the table with her child for family meals when she's working 14 hours a day in the field picking berries. Let alone telling them to eat peanut butter toast when the interpreters I was working with didn't even have a word for peanut butter. Not only that, but people were coming into my office with shame, self-blame, around bodies and food. And interestingly, there were a lot of people following my perfect equation, and their bodies weren't changing. Also, they were pretty content. They were there because someone told them they had to be there, that they had a problem, but they were pretty happy. So I got curious, and I met this woman, Dana Sturdivant, who completely changed my practice. She introduced me to motivational interviewing, social determinants of health, and health at every size. And boy, did I start listening. I started to listen to people in different body sizes and experiences than my own, who had different lived experiences than I had ever had. And what I noticed is the things that I was learning started to reduce shame and reduce self-blame and doubt in my clients. And in fact, it brought community, pleasure, and satisfaction to food, which is what brought me to this profession in the first place. And as I do, I started telling everybody about this new thing that I had learned about. And I was all over the country and all over my state sharing this information. Jump ahead to 2020 and I move home. I'm from Butte. I come from a long line of bobcats, as you can see here. And I get a job as the eating disorder dietitian at Student Health here at MSU, and I start teaching a couple classes on the side. In 2023, Melody Aniker, who had been the program director of the food and nutrition program for over 20 years, decided it was time to retire. And she remembered in 2010 when I told her my dream job was hers. And here I am today. So what do we do in our program now? Of course we talk about food and nutrition science and the benefits of movement, but we spend more time talking about the social determinants of health, those things that really make it hard for people to make change and that impact them independent of anything else. We also talk a lot about the complexities of health and well-being and the complexities of body size. Food and nutrition is not one size fits all. It is very multifaceted, and our students are leaving understanding that now. We've done a lot to change our program. We've normalized diverse body sizes. We teach gentle nutrition, and many of our faculty model that for their students. Donuts in the classroom, folks. Donuts on my pants. We also teach weight-inclusive nutrition. We've revised assignments and lab activities that align better with weight-inclusive practices. We've updated case studies. We discuss the use of non-stigmatizing language and why that is important. And we really consider the whole person. And the way in which we do that is by teaching our students nutrition counseling skills. Skills that trust them that the patient is the expert and to listen to their experiences before jumping to an intervention. And this is not just for the future clients our students will serve. This is for our students too. 99% of dietetic students report body dissatisfaction. 76% of registered dietitian nutritionists have symptoms associated with a diagnosable eating disorder. Even more have symptoms associated with disordered eating. And in 2023, a paper was published that said eating disorders and disordered eating are an occupational hazard for our profession. In surveys from our students, when they ask them about their experience learning about weight-inclusive care, They tell us that it has helped them become compassionate and more caring for themselves and others, that it has improved their body image, improved their relationship with food, and made them much more aware of the societal beliefs that impacts the way that we think about our bodies and the foods that we eat. When one student was asked how weight-inclusive care has impacted her, she said, "It's been very integral to how I operate and live. I personally have experienced the effects of a non-inclusive approach as part of my eating disorder started when a provider recommended that I lose weight at age 13, despite being a young, active middle schooler in multiple sports. Learning about this approach has been very healing and important to me and allowed me to shift perspectives on health." Another student said, "I am comfortable in my body now. I was definitely at war with it after finishing my bachelor's degree." Not from Montana State. "I picked up a lot of damaging messages from my undergraduate nutrition program that led to disordered eating patterns and body discomfort. I trust my body now to let me know when I need to eat." When students leave our program, they leave with a robust understanding of nutrition science and with an understanding of the complexities of health. They take these two buckets of knowledge and create nutrition interventions alongside their patients that are going to address the whole person. And we hope that our students are leaving with an acceptance and respect for their own bodies and the skills and tools necessary to integrate self-compassion into their own lives to reduce their own eating disorder risk. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Koltz. I'm an assistant professor in community health and the gerontology specialist with MSU Extension. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity to share my caregiving work with you. I'm also a proud grandfather, as you can see in the photo. Family is the basis for much of the work that I do, helping families navigate the challenges of healthy caregiving. I could not have accomplished this without some help along the way to Dr. Rebecca Koltz, my partner, the first doctor in our household. Our evening walks are where many of my ideas are formulated. Our walks over the years have produced some of the best ways to serve caregivers across the state, caregivers like me. I also want to thank my two program managers, Peyton Vining, a former undergraduate and graduate student who leads the Caregiver Respite Retreat program and also leads the Kinship Navigator program. Lisa Brockwitz, who is turning the Mobile Memory Cafe into a leading program on education and awareness of dementia. I also want to thank the 24 previous grad students who have worked on my programs. They have truly made an impact on the work that I do. And they've learned by doing, our college mantra. Now I want to share why I'm so passionate about my work, helping caregivers be the best that they can be. It all started when I was a child, you see. My parents are up here. My mom was born with tuberculosis and had been disabled her entire life. She couldn't walk very well, didn't drive, and was very limited in mobility. And more recently, I realized that I was actually providing care for her since I was very young. Fast forward several years, and in 2015, I returned to school to earn my master's degree, but at the same time, I was doing so many things to help my mom and my dad with medical decisions. I was proactive in my caregiving education during this time, learning as much as I possibly could to help my situation. I then decided to pursue my PhD in gerontology, which is the study of aging, not the study of old people. I completed this in 2000, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And then, in March of 2021, I launched my Caregiver Respite Retreat programs after personally seeing how the story of caregiving unfolds for caregivers. It is often unplanned, and it falls to someone who is not trained on how to care for someone, much less take care of themselves. In June of 2021, my dad had a heart attack. And it was the hospital, and he was in the hospital for recovery. And 4 days later, my mom passed away after living in a nursing home for 5 years. My dad's health continued to decline, and caregiving was a challenge for me because he lived in Wisconsin. In January of 2024, it was decided that I would move my dad to Montana to help him live independently as he possibly could. With the help of the VA and home health, we helped him live in his own apartment until he passed in August of this last year. As a caregiver, I felt immense stress and a decrease in my own personal well-being, much the same as caregivers my programs attend to. But my story does not end there. I promise it is much more upbeat from here on. My caregiver programs were developed at the same time I was going through this personal journey. These programs focus on engaging caregivers in experiential learning self-care practices. We start by giving caregivers a $100 gift card to cover travel expenses or for their own personal well-being. We use it to remove barriers and move them out of their environment to a more relaxing setting at a respite retreat. A retreat includes 4 experiential activities and a midday lunch break. Our first activities always create experiences that engage in our senses, such as sugar scrubs, scented candles. We also engage caregivers to consider how we can use these smells and scents around us, which often take us to a place of where we are happiest. For example, one of my favorite things that caregivers share, especially women who share about baking bread with their mothers or grandmothers. Generally, a place where they find small pockets of joy even in the midst of caregiving. Caregivers at our retreats begin to fully engage almost immediately and start to smile, laugh, and get away from their caregiving responsibilities. You can see the smiles on their faces. We take caregivers through different types of activities to connect them with wellness. Some of these are glitter stress jars, clay turtles to remind us to slow down, planting plants to connect to growth areas for us. We then reflect on how these activities affect our happiness and ask caregivers to create a plan to use these activities at home. Then we explore potential new experiences they can create at home to improve their well-being for as little as 1 to 2 minutes a day. Simple ways to engage in self-care. The Caregiver Respite Food Box program that I also direct attempts to do something similar by providing caregivers with 5 meals that are already prepared and ready to heat and eat. We ship these meals directly to their door, reducing preparation and cleanup time and giving them a break. We have spent almost $700,000 on both respite programs with positive impacts on caregiver well-being. Most importantly, empowering them to be better caregivers. We have served over 2,500 caregivers in these programs across 52 counties over the past 5 years with 18,000 hours of respite provided. Woohoo! We are most proud of this true impact on measured well-being. The pre, post, and monthly check-ins tell us this. Also, the smiles on caregivers' faces as they leave our respite retreats is extremely rewarding, including the hugs that we all get. The Kinship Navigator program for caregivers, the other program that I direct, offers assistance of $250 per family to support needs they may have because a child of a family member needs a home. These changes are often precipitated by a death in the family, addictions, or imprisonment. Children are often in crisis in these situations. We enroll caregivers in evidence-based case management program, which offers guidance, goal planning, education, and information referrals to services that help them keep these children in their families and out of the foster care system. We have served over 700 families over the past 5 years. The fourth program I have started is the Mobile Memory Cafe because caregivers often need education and the community at large is not aware of the impacts of dementia on our communities. We provide education and referral assistance and will be adding cognitive screening in this next year because referrals for those services often fall to the wayside. We have already served over 1,000 people in 38 counties over the past 2 years, 824 this last year alone. The proof that we've empowered caregivers to improve their health, wellness, and well-being is in the data. Total of over 3,000 caregivers have been served, and as I mentioned, those 18,000 hours of respite and countless number of lives impacted positively. I even exceeded my own expectations when I started this position by reaching more than $2 million in threshold in funding these programs. My goals moving forward, $5 million in funding 5,000 caregivers who can engage in our programs across all 56 Montana counties over the next 5 years. I really believe that these are attainable goals. I have to have another huge thanks to all my statewide partners, because without them, we would not have had such a huge impact over the past 5 years for Montana caregivers. Beginning with the startup grants I received when I first started my position from the College of EHHD and MSU Extension. These funds seeded the grants that I continue to receive from 3 different divisions of the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services, and also from the various partners listed on the screens who have chosen to help fund our programs. My experiences as a caregiver have greatly impacted my work. What I have learned over the past 5 years is that when you empower caregivers to focus on their well-being, it creates a mantra that I live by and I now teach. When a caregiver is well, they provide the best care. And I'm going to end by saying what I always say at my respite retreats. I have the greatest job in the world to be able to do what I do. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. I'm Carrie Myers, and I'm a professor in the Adult and Higher Education program, and I hope that I will take you on a joy ride. First, I'd like to start by asking, how many of you watched or went to the MSU Bobcat game? Okay, how many of you would identify as a Bobcat? Okay, I want to take you back there for just a moment.
Cats can get a first down inside the 5. Showing pressure on 4th down and overtime. They bring pressure. Lamson throws. End zone. Caught!
Touchdown! Taco Dollar! Okay, once you caught your breath, how many of you felt elated? My friends, you have experienced joy. So joy theory is the addition of elation and right of relation. So basically what that means is joy is a temporary, intense feeling of elation when your identity is well connected with the moment and the experience. So if you think about your experience of watching that game, you felt elated and you were a bobcat, you had joy. Joy resides in between ecstasy and happiness. Ecstasy is elation, but the individual loses themselves in the process. Joy is elation, but there's a heightened self-awareness that an individual has. Happiness is consistency. We often think of it as contentment. You can think about watching the game, you were happy, you were there, but you felt joy when you saw that incredible catch to win the game. I want to take you, talk a little bit about the forces that influence my scholarly journey on joy. The first thing, as the new administration took office last fall, higher education was disheveled. There were many disruptions, shifting mandates on a daily basis. All of us were living in a place of uncertainty. Don't worry, this isn't a political speech. There is no joy in that at all. But after reading the Daily Chronicle, I was getting a little, I felt despair. Every single headline seemed to be saying something that was going to dramatically shift this institution that we love. So what I did is I took the headlines from last spring, and I put them into AI. And this was the word art that was created. Political pressure, DEI, free speech, funding, science, these were all under attack. So as someone who has studied issues within the context of higher education for over 35 years, I really felt despair. And I knew if I felt this way, that my students who also study issues in higher education probably also felt some despair. So I went into class and I asked my students, what gave you joy last week? They all looked at me, looked puzzled. And over the weeks, I kept asking the same question, and slowly things came out. Spending time with friends, spending time with family, watching my children's sporting event. I had promise, but what I noticed is none of them were talking about academics. So I reframed my question. What is it about your academics that brings you joy? And I remember one student saying, I'm too stressed to feel joy. And while that's funny, there's also a sadness that comes with that. So over the course of the next few weeks, I'd ask them again, what in your academics brought you joy? And slowly I began hearing, I passed my comprehensive exams. I submitted a draft to my advisor. I got really positive feedback on a paper. One person even said, I found that perfect journal literature review on my topic. Well, now I had hope. So my husband and I were at the American Educational Research Association conference presenting our research last spring. So I sprung forward to April. And we had just got done presenting, and we were joyous. And we were walking down, and we ran into my friend and colleague, Bryce. And Bryce was on the phone, but he was just hanging up, and he had this stunned look on his face. And we're like, what's up? And he said, his NSF grant just got canceled. My heart just broke. I know how passionate he was about his research, how much time and effort he put into his work, and the fact that it could be just taken away so quickly really saddened me. And Bryce had this picture that was actually taken during COVID, but it seems very symbolic now, given that NSF canceled $324 million in DEI grants. So I was on the plane coming home, not feeling great, and I was listening to my favorite band, Widespread Panic. And all of a sudden, this song came on, Hope in a Hopeless World. And I took off my headphone and I put it up to my husband and I said, is this a sign? And he, always the analytic, he said, no, it's a coincidence. But I knew it was a sign. I came home and I knew what I had to do. I knew I had to study something positive, something joyful. So I came home and I had a healthy obsession and went to the literature. And I was just trying to find how were scholars talking about joy. Well, lo and behold, there wasn't a lot of scholars talking about joy. And there was even fewer scholars talking about it in education. So this got me really excited. So 3 elements came together to set my path, my journey on joy. And the first one is study what you know. I've been studying graduate students for over a decade. And what I know is they have a lot of stressors in their lives. A lot of those stressors lead to emotional and mental health issues. Imposter syndrome is very well known, and it can lead to a lack of belonging. But I also know that impact of peers and mentors have a positive effect on students and can mitigate some of those negative effects. Then, like my student, I came across this great article, and her name's Kayte Kaminski, and she's actually a professor now at the University of Minnesota. But at the time, she had written this article as a graduate student. She was getting her PhD. She was in a very divisive and very competitive PhD program. As she said, it sucked the joy out of her. She talks about this in the article. It's an autoethnography of sorts. And she mentions that she got this mentor, and that this mentor all of a sudden gave her hope, and that she began to see joy. She felt joy let her overcome stress. She felt joy in her intellectual growth, and she felt joy in being authentic. Well, joy is social. So I didn't want to go on this journey alone. So I went to my friend, colleague, and she happens to be a talented PhD student in our department, Alexa Alberta. And I said, do you want to go on a joyride? And she was like, yes. So what's interesting about this is that we were on equal footing. I didn't know anything about joy. I was studying it for the first time. She didn't know anything about joy, and she was studying it for the first time. So here we were together, studying joy, having joy, studying joy, very meta, and really embarking on this path. So what did we find? Well, we find that joy is a multidimensional construct. It has the emotion, it has that intensity, temporary elation, but it also has a cognitive piece where the individual has a cognitive appraisal about how that experience fits with who they are. Joy is collective. Joy breeds joy. Joy is also social. Some research shows that 70% of joyful experiences are with others. Joy is ideological. You can think about the values, beliefs, and ideas within a discipline and how that individuals who feel a sense of belonging to that discipline can feel joy. Joy can be paradoxical. I had my own experience with paradoxical joy when I turned to the literature and I saw that no one was studying it. On the one hand, I was like, oh yeah, I got the gap. But on the other hand, I was really saddened that nobody was studying this important concept of joy in academics. So Alexa and I, together, we decided, okay, well, let's connect this to a theory. What theory are we going to use? We need a conceptual framework. And so we looked at broaden and build theory, which is a theory on building resistance. And the base of that theory is really about positive emotions. It's about joy. And when you have those positive emotions, you're then able to broaden and expand the ways you think, the actions you take. From there, you can build a strong foundation of social, emotional, and cognitive support that allows you to mitigate and respond to those stressors. So we thought, okay, this is it. Students, graduate students, we want them to feel joy. We want them to build resiliency. So when those stresses happen in their graduate experience, they have the tools to overcome it. So we started a project and we're using photo elicitation. And what we're doing is we're giving our participants, our students, asking them to take pictures of times that they feel joy in their graduate experience. We piloted this, and these are some of the images from the academics that we asked. And we're at the very beginning of this collection of the data, but we're using the photos to elicit within the interviews how they make meaning of these experiences that they've selected that represent their academic joy. We're really excited about being able to contribute to, in a positive way, to what we know about graduate students' experiences, and really hoping that joy exceeds beyond that. So, about a month ago, I was sitting in my reading nook, and I was reading about joy, and I looked outside, and I saw this. And I instantly was elated. I called my husband in, and I said, oh my God, look at this. And he's like, oh, that's cool. And I said, do you think it's a sign? And he's like, no, Carrie, the Bobcats just won the championship after a 41-year drought. He's like, the parade's going on downtown. I'm pretty sure it was expected. That did not deter me, though. I felt that elation, and I reflected on it, and I realized that sitting there reading about joy and being a Bobcat, that I was at my right of relation and truly experiencing joy. Thank you.
I feel joyful. I mean, one of the things that I absolutely love about this event is listening to all of the presenters and seeing where is the points in common. And I think what I take away from tonight is that our college broadens and builds connections in communities, here on campus, among graduate students, among students in our classrooms, in the Bozeman community, and all across Montana. In fact, we have graduate students and students from all over the world, and so our impact literally knows no global bounds. That we read and we are lifelong learners. Alison kicked us off by saying, even after earning a PhD, I went back to complete yet another certificate. Dr. Myers just talked about starting a whole new area of study in joy. We model that which we teach, which is learning for a lifetime. And so I just want to thank you so much for coming and being part of our learning community, for being part of our Pounce. And it wouldn't be a Bobcat Pounce opportunity to not invite you to come back out, to be part of our Pounce again in April, when we will take part in this 5K to really celebrate the wellness and the well-being, all of the ways that we connect with one another. Come and be part of that. In the same way that Dr. Koltz talked about wanting to raise $5 million to reach 5,000 caregivers in the next 5 years, this is our 5th annual Bobcat Pounce. And this year we aim to raise $50,000 to support student scholarships. And we know that you're part of our community, and we thank you so much for joining us tonight. Can we give our presenters another round of applause? Thank you so, so much. I also want to thank our centers and institutes, our student clubs, all of those who were tabling outside and inside the event space today. Thank you so much for what you do in reaching out to students and communities in every part of the state. Can we give our centers and student clubs a round of applause? And this event just cannot take place without wonderful coordination and videotaping, and so I'd love to acknowledge and thank Bill Fries and Becky Stanton for all of your doing. Becky works on this for months and months. And if you have questions that you want to ask any of our presenters, they'll be along these tables on the far side of the room. And so you can have a one-on-one conversation and learn more about joy, or horticulture therapy, or caregiving, or the Turtle Island Tales, or how to keep your lights ablaze in your eyes. Thank you so much for coming. We're really honored to have you part of our Bobcat family, and go Cats!